Welcome back to the Chatters Box podcast. My name is Kyle McClellan, your host. And this month, I am excited about this one. This is probably one of my longest teammates, longest relationships that I've had in professional baseball. Somebody been very close to, was in his wedding, have a lot of memories, a lot of time spent with. And so I am excited to welcome in to the Chatters Box, Jason Motte, former Cardinals pitcher, one of very few people who have ever closed out a World Series, which I'm sure we will talk about. Very, very good friend of mine. I'm excited about this one. We got a lot to talk about, Jason. We got about 20 years of history that we can talk about.
This is going to happen in a 10-minute span. I think.
Yeah, I told you, but 6 minutes. This is all we need is 6 minutes.
That's it. That's all we got. No, thanks. Thanks for having me on, man. I appreciate it. This is pretty awesome.
Well, we're going to cover all kinds of things today. We are doing this virtually. Jason was just in town a few days ago for his charity cornhole event that I was able to be a part of. Been able to be a part of that for several years. Give us an update on that. How did it go? I saw the numbers came out. It looked like a huge success once again for you and Caitlin.
Yeah, everything was good. I think we raised about $140,000 this year, which was about what we do up there in St. Louis. We had 140 something teams up there. It was a great time. And like I said, you guys came out. I think y'all went 4-0, dominated, and then I think I was 0-4 this year. So a little bit different story. So I didn't make it to the round of the elimination round, but it was always a good time. Like I said, anytime we can get together to help raise money, raise awareness for people in the fight, and just help those who are going through a tough time is why don't we do it, and why don't we continue to do it. And like I said, this was our 10th year doing it, which is crazy to think about. It's a lot has happened in 10 years. So
yeah, touch a little bit on what you guys do with those funds and what the organization supports.
So a lot of stuff we do. So with our main goal is to raise, money for cancer research and for families and, people who are battling this disease, just to help those where the people help my wife's grandfather when he was going through it. As far as with the events, if we have events in St. Louis, our money stays there in St. Louis. So we've done stuff with Cardinal Glennon, Mercy Hospital, stuff like that, Cardinal Glennon. And so it's one of those things that in doing that, the funds in St. Louis stay there. We do events here in Memphis, and we work with the West Cancer Center here in Memphis, St. Jude, Ronald McDonald House. Whenever we do an event here, we keep those funds here. So it's crazy. Like I said, in doing it, but it's one of those things, and getting out and being able to help other people is what it's all about. And I think everyone at our events kind of know why we're there and what it is we're doing. And, we're there to help people who are going through a tough time the way that people help with my wife's grandfather when he was going through it in their family. So,
well, you and Caitlin do a great job, and we're thankful that you're still a part of the St. Louis community. Still come back, do your events. You're still around St. Louis quite a bit. Let's go back to the beginning. All right. So 2003, Jason Motte gets drafted by the St. Louis Cardinals as a catcher. What absolutely blows my mind about that whole thing is you get sent to Johnson City, Tennessee, which is where you're from, which when people ask you where you're from, you always have a really long answer of you're all over the place. You moved quite a bit, but at the time your family was in Johnson City, Tennessee. And so you show up to the home ballpark, essentially, of you and your family get to all be there, and you come in as a catcher. Me as a pitcher, so you caught me quite a bit that first year. We all, as a pitching staff, were not a big fan of Jason Motte. We did not like Jason Motte because Jason Motte always loved to throw the ball as hard as he could down to second base and show us all up that we didn't have the arm that he had behind the plate. And so we definitely had to get off the mound. So coming from, your high school or whatever, maybe your catcher didn't have a great arm. And now all of a sudden you got a guy that's throwing 98 down to second base about head high, off the ground. So you had to figure out really quickly how to get off the mound. And so let's talk a little bit about the early years. While we're doing that, I just happened to sit down. I'm in my office, happened to sit down, and in my drawer, I was like, you know what? I think I have the card set from Johnson City.
Yes. Look at that little baby face. look at no beard. I mean, that's 2003 straight out of college right there.
2003.
That's some sideburns.
In fairness, there's mine.
Is that you?
Yeah.
You're that, yeah.
Yep.
Same beautiful face.
Yeah.
That face.
So let's go back. Let's talk about the early years.
And you just happen to have these in your.
I literally. I have the whole set right here. We can go through the whole thing. I have my top prospect Appalachian card. You didn't get one of those, but I did
not. I wasn't there very long. I was there for I think like a week and a half. I smashed. I think I hit like 300 in Johnson City. Like, this kid needs to get moved up, and I proceeded to hit a $180 the rest of the time in my career. But JC, I think I smashed. So it was awesome.
Yeah. So you come in as a catcher. So talk a little bit about your background coming in. Obviously, didn't have any experience pitching. We'll get into that here in a little bit. But coming as a catcher, and you caught for several years. I mean, you moved up pretty quick. You were in big league camp. What a lot of people probably don't know or understand is that usually if you want to get to big league camp pretty early, being a catcher is a good way to get there. They need guys to catch bullpens. So Matt Pagnazzi kind of came in the same time, and you guys really pushed each other in those early years of climbing the system. And you guys were definitely kind of the two, catchers that everybody had their eye on early on in your career.
Yeah. It was one of those things that I'd caught my whole life. When I was like 8 years old, 7 years old, the coach puts you at different positions, and anyone that's been around me, I'm like here, there, everywhere. Like, ooh, look, squirrel, bat, ball. I'm everywhere. So like when they put me behind the plate, I was like, ooh, like every ball comes this way. I'm in the game. I have to focus. So it helped me kind of focus and lock in on what I need to do. But I was a catcher in high school, college, and then like I said, coming to Johnson City, it was pretty cool because, like I said, my family was living there at the time. We were in New York when I was in high school, freshman year of college. They moved down to Johnson City to be near my older brother and some family and stuff like that. So, being able to be there and start my pro career in Johnson City and literally had my whole family there was pretty cool. And we can get into the story after that game of the first game when I tried to sneak out without taking a shower. I'm not sure what this podcast is rated, but we can get into that at some point, maybe. But it was for me. It was one of those experiences that I didn't know what I was getting myself into. I know that like us and many of us, like I said, you play baseball and you're like, man, I want to play high school ball. I want to play college ball. Well, you never played high school or college ball, but you get what I'm saying. Mm-hmm. But like, it's like, hey, I want to get drafted. I want to make it to the big leagues, but you don't know what that next level is until you get there. And then, look around the locker room. There's people from all over. There's California kids, there's Tennessee kids, there's Dominican, there's Puerto Rico, there's, you name it. People from all over the world are in one place, and you're like, all right, let's go. And you're all there with the same goal, to go out there and make it to the big leagues. And I think, that group we had there, I remember walking in and just thinking, okay, all right, not like I've made it, because I knew that wasn't my goal, and like Johnson City wasn't your goal, but it was like, I'm gonna go out there and give it everything I had. And you made reference to me, throwing the ball hard back, to second base or back to the pitchers. Moving forward, like when I pitched, like I only really knew one speed. I knew like I had to give everything I had. I wasn't good enough to halfway throw it to second. I wasn't good enough even when I was on the mound to, hey, let me halfway throw this pitch, because I was like, I wasn't that good. So I just knew mentally I had to go out there and like, okay, if that guy goes, I'm coming up and I'm firing. And it took pitchers not very long to learn that, hey, I'm going to throw it and I'm not ducking down. I'm going to throw it and I'm going to skedaddle off the mound. And I did, I did have some pretty good life on it. And, my ball kind of stayed pretty true. And I think that was a big part of it from older brother who played baseball, went to the University of Arizona, played minor leagues for the Twins for a while before he got sick, was a shortstop. And he always told me, like, hey, if you're going to be an infield, 4-seam, pull down, let that thing ride out. So, I mean, I would throw it to second, head would be this way and trying to let that ball ride out. And, I remember first couple of times, even second baseman, shortstop, I'd go and I'd try to put a ball in the bag and they, think that ball is going to dive off. And it wouldn't necessarily dive off as much. And it'd be like, they had the glove down. It'd like smack them in the, like, I thought it was going to die. And it, but, I tried to come up every single time and, get after it to second base. Cause like I said, my hitting wasn't the best, but I knew what I could do. And I was going to do what I could do the best of my ability every single time that I got the chance to. So that's kind of why I went about doing it that way. And I know that pitchers didn't love it exactly when I fired it back to them and stuff like that. But like I said, it wasn't done, in a bad way. It was like, hey man, I got to throw it back, because you see a lot of catchers sometimes they do the little lollipop back and that guy steals. I'm like, well, you're not going to do that on me. And so I kind of, like I said, I had one speed.
So defense will get, and it did. Defense got you to accelerate through the organization pretty quickly. Mm-hmm. But ultimately, I think this is where it comes to the rubber meets the road of you got to be a complete player, right? Mm-hmm. To get to the big leagues, like you're not going to get there being a defensive specialist playing every day. You could be a backup catcher and hit, whatever. There's some other things that those guys bring. Usually those guys are guys that have played for a while and at the tail end. Sometimes they're guys that, they're getting, a shot at it, but it's hard to make it to that level without developing all the way. And so offensively was your struggle. I mean, there's no, you're always good about talking about that, but yeah. I mean, so you get to high A, and that's really where that's where kind of the decision had to happen, right? So you're 4 years into your playing career, always known for the defensive side, the blocking, the throwing, the catching, the receiving, that type of thing. The call in the game was never a problem, but it was the offensive side. And it in high A, having to kind of be there for a little bit and not getting any traction on that is when the conversation had to come of making that switch.
Yeah. I mean, I was there in 2004. I was in Palm Beach in 2004. I got drafted in 2003, was in rookie ball and then low A, and then made the high A team in 2004, which making the high A team out of spring training becomes a trend that I did for the next I don't know how many years. I was like, if I don't leave this complex, I'm going to lose my mind. But, I made it in 2004 and I made the All-Star team that year. And I think at the All-Star break, I was batting $180, mm-hmm. but I had thrown out like 75% of base runners. And it was me, the catchers were me, Russell Martin, and Casey McGee. And Casey ended up going on playing in third base in the big leagues, and Russell Martin was Russell Martin. And so like that, but those were the three catchers. And I remember talking to one of the Cardinal PR guys still there, Chris Tuno, and he was up in the booth at Port St. Lucie, and they're like, is this a typo? Like this guy's batting $180? And he's like, yeah. And he's like, why is he here? And he's like, just hold on. Like, just wait for him to get in. And, and then I finally got in. I think Martin caught like 5 innings and I caught, the rest. And first guy gets on, I come up, hose one down, and guy's like, okay, like I got it, and then I think I struck out in a game, but I mean, that was about par. But I mean, man, it was one of those things. Yeah. Hitting, they came to me in 2005 after that and asked me about pitching. They're like, hey, what do you think about pitching? And I kind of came back to them. I was like, give me to the All-Star break. Let me I had a half season. I've had one full season. Let me, get to the All-Star break. And that was about April. And I had, like, from that point on till when eventually I ended up breaking my thumb. I got a foul ball off my thumb that broke my thumb just before the All-Star break. But from when they brought up pitching to that point, I kind of was just like, you know what, man? I was like, whatever. Not whatever in a bad way, but like, man, I'm out here like trying to do this, and got every other hitting coach and their mother out there trying to get me to do this and this. And I'm like overthinking it. And I was like, dude, just see the ball and hit it. I mean, at the end of the day, what's the worst they do? Like turn into a pitcher? Like, you know what I mean? Like, hey, so like from that point on, I actually started hitting pretty good. I think I was like 280 from that moment to when I ended up getting the foul ball, and then came back to spring training the next year. Did okay. Was in big league spring training again as a catcher. This was 06. And then just struggled at the plate again in 06. And this time, when they did bring me in, it wasn't, hey, we're thinking about turning you to a pitcher. It was kind of a, you want to pitch or you want to go home? Like, how's it? And I was like, are those my options?
Yeah.
I mean, and that's not the conversation, but it was kind of like, hey, man, I think we're going to make this move and we want you to be on board. We'll give you, some time to think about it. And I just remember having that conversation. It was in Clearwater. We were playing the Phillies, and I remember walking out of the locker room just being like, all right, I've never pitched. I wouldn't even know where to begin. But you know what? The same way I do everything, I'm going to go out there. If this is what it is, it's, try pitching or go home, hitting $180 in the minor leagues over, 2.5, 3 years. It's kind of proven I'm not really going to start smashing all of a sudden. But I was like, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to give it everything I have, and I'm going to leave it all out there, and we'll see what happens. If it ends up being good, sweet. If not, it's not going to be for lack of trying. I'm going to go out there and give it everything I have. And, I think I was out there, later on that day throwing a bullpen.
Yeah. So Mark Riggins, the pitching coordinator, was there. I believe he was a part of that conversation. Yes, it was the conversation. Yeah. So I want to give a little context to where I was at this point. So we were teammates in 03, and then you were moving pretty quick. 04, I was in low A in Peoria. Like you said, you were in high A. So we were not teammates again. Saw each other in spring training, obviously, that type of thing. So in 2005, I have Tommy John surgery. And so I go home for the rest of the year. And I show up in 2006, which is the year you're talking about. And I'm rehabbing all year. So I'm in extended spring training, which is at the Cardinals spring training complex in Jupiter, Florida, which is also where extended spring training is, which is where all the high school, the draft picks, your rehab guys are all kind of at. So I'm down there and hear that, hey, Jason Motte is going to be a pitcher. And so I think you guys finished that road trip, and then you show up and they put Jason in extended spring training to start learning mechanics and that kind of thing. And I'll never forget, mechanics. Yeah. Yeah. I'll never forget. I think the first day you were there, it was definitely the first few days.
Oh yeah.
I could pretty much pinpoint the locker that we were sitting in. We were in the back. They had like the rehab guys in one area. And so they considered you a rehab guy, I guess, at the time. And we're sitting there on the stools in here, and there's, 100, extended spring training guys. I've been in for 4 years. You've been in for 3 years into the pro ball thing. And we're at the lowest point. Like this, you can't get any lower in the United States for professional ball than where we are. And I remember sitting there and I looked at you and I was like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
My elbow hurts every second of every day. You're a stinking pitcher all of a sudden.
Yeah.
And we were just like, I don't know, like what are we doing? Like we are, this is miserable and we have zero chance, but we're just kind of here killing time.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget that. It was the lockers just past the entry to the shower. Like we were back in that little area. And so anyway, we're down there and both at the lowest levels and both kind of accelerate, pretty quickly. I mean, you're pitching, took off pretty quick. So you're in extended spring training. You do that for a little while and then talk about your path there. Cause you got back to high A, your normal spot pretty quick.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and it was funny. So that year in 06, I was started in Palm Beach. Like you said, I actually went to Double A. Someone got hurt in Double A, so they needed a catcher. This was before they turned me into a pitcher. They sent me to Double A. I played in one game. I was 3 for 3 in Double A. And Hammer, the manager at the time, called me in after the game. And I kind of knew the business. I knew like I was only up here because Johnny got hurt, and I'm just filling in. So I go 3 for 3, and he's like, I don't think I've ever had to do this. He's like, I've never had to send someone down after a 3 for 3. He's like, but he's like, they're going to send you down. Then literally sent me down. A couple weeks later, a day later, I was in Palm Beach. And then a couple weeks later, I'm in extended. So I went from like AA catching to extended in like a week and a half, 2 weeks. And I was like, what? Like literally, what is going on? But I went out there. I was heck, I think I was pitching in games. I think I threw a couple bullpens, and they kind of threw me right in there. Like,
so who was the bullpen? Like what? I mean, what were those? Like who was the instructor that they kind of assigned you to help?
Lily was Derek Lilliquist was there, and he was with High A at the time, and Riggins was there. And then when I went to extended, it was Al Holland and Sid Manji were there. So like they were there, like watching my bullpens, and Riggins was there as well. So it was one of those things like they'd sit there and they watch my bullpens, and they're like, "Hey, you're throwing strikes," and I'm like, well, heck, I could throw it 128 feet right here. I mean, it's half the distance. I hope I can throw it, and so like I was throwing strikes, but I was in games, extended games in no time, and was throwing the ball well. Had no off speed. I don't, we can talk about that later. I don't know if I did even when I had one. But I think, I think it started off, I was doing well because people were like, oh, maybe he'll throw it off speed pitch here. Like, no, I was just doing another heater, and like, okay, now he's gonna, nope, like, and then it's like, hold on. But yeah, I was in extended. And then when camp broke, I went to State College, and I played there for Mark DeJohn, Schilt, and Sid Manji was there. And went up there, and we had, I mean, you had a bunch of good guys like getting drafted. So you're sitting there. I was there with like Eddie Dagerman, and all these other, and I'm like sitting there like, okay, there's this guy, and you're in high A, or not high, you're in short season ball. I mean, there's a lot of high draft pick guys there, and I didn't know once again what I was doing. I'm in State College and just throwing baseballs and trying to figure out what's going on. Ended up throwing the ball well there, and then got called up to low A. Ended up sleeping on a couch in someone's apartment out in the middle of a cornfield in Quad Cities, and went there and started pitching there with more first round guys. I mean, Chris Perez was there, John Jay was there. There were I mean, just sitting there look around that bullpen. You're like, holy cow! Like these are like some good guys. I don't even know what I'm doing. I'm just out here throwing a baseball. And then, ended up finishing up that year. Had a pretty good year. Then came into spring training in 2007, and once again made that Palm Beach team. So I mean, I out of spring training, I made the high A team in 2004, 2005, 2006 as a catcher, and then 2007 as a pitcher. So I was I think if I'd have made it one more year in Palm Beach, I think I was just going to run for mayor. But yeah, I'd been there for a little bit, but this time, 2007 was different because it was a different position, and it, and a lot of people know it there. I mean, hey man, you could with the humidity and stuff there, you could almost throw it right down the middle and be like, enjoy hitting a pop up somewhere. But yeah, it was a crazy couple months to go from, like I said, catching in AA to, hey, you're sleeping on a couch in the middle of a cornfield in Davenport, Iowa, trying to be like, what's going on here? So it was a crazy turn of events, but like I said, just went out there and I'm going to do everything I can and give it all I got and kind of see what happens.
So our paths crossed again in 2007 while you were kind of doing that. I'm still recovering from surgery. I ended up having to have another surgery to clean some stuff up. So I'm 22 months into this rehab for Tommy John, still down in Jupiter in extended spring, trying to get going. I come into that spring training. I'm healthy, quote healthy, end up having a setback. They put me in extended. And so I'm starting to come back and I'm feeling good. And my velocity's up. And I remember going to Jeff Lunau, who's the farm director, knocked on the door, and he was relatively new. And I said, hey, I don't even know if you know who I am, but I was trying to make the high A team out of spring. I got hurt. I'm healthy now. Like, I'd really like to get going. And he was like, well, we can send you home. I was like, well, I don't want that option. Like, I was just, just kind of trying to figure this out. And he said, well, the reality is you were probably going to make the low A team. There's no spots. We're, 2-3 weeks out of spring training. Maybe a month out of spring training. Everybody's healthy. There's no spots. So you're just going to have to hang here till something opens up. And unfortunately, that opening happened, and you were affected by that, as was I.
Yes.
And that was the Josh Hancock situation, a reliever for the Cardinals, out of the bullpen. Tragically, was involved in an accident and passed away. And I'll never forget that phone call I had from Mark Riggins on my cell phone that night. When I looked down and I saw his name, I knew something was happening, and it was either going to be I was going to low A where I had struggled and it probably wasn't going to be good, or I was going to go to high A where I had an opportunity with a new coaching staff and just a new environment. Yeah. And I picked up the phone and Riggy said, Mac, tomorrow you're going to go across the hallway and you're going to go to high A. Yeah. And you were the byproduct of that. You were the one that moved from high A to double A. Well, yeah. You were pitching really well down there. I think you were maybe closing or pitching the back end. I'm not sure. I think you were closing. Yeah. And so you went to Springfield and I took your spot in Palm Beach. Mm-hmm. And so I go over there and start pitching out of the bullpen, which I hadn't really been out of the bullpen, and kind of had some success. You were going to Springfield and you were pitching well. And a month later I get moved up to Springfield. Yeah. And so now we're teammates in double A. And our bullpen that year, when I showed up, you guys had a really good first half of the season. Mm-hmm. And then I got there and ended up kind of working into that 7th inning spot. So our 7th, 8th, 9th inning was me in the 7th, you in the 8th, and Chris Perez in the 9th. Yeah. And if I remember right, I think Chris Perez, they said, blew the save on opening day in the double A season. Mm-hmm. And I think since then, when I got there and throughout the season, I think we were like something like 49-1 with the lead after 7. And so it was cool for me, everything we had been through and the struggles, and sitting on that stool saying, what in the world are we doing here? Yeah. So like now we're in double A having success together. Mm-hmm. And seeing like, hey, we're on the opposite side of where we were a couple of years ago. And once you get to double A, you're close. Like you can smell it, you can taste it. You are, if you have success at double A, you got a shot at making it to the major leagues. And I think that's when I started getting that feeling of like, I can maybe do this. I'm having success here. I think we can kind of do it. I think me and you were going through that together. And that was just a cool thing. And then we end up going to the Arizona Fall League together. Yep. That year, where they send, for those that don't know, I don't know what, 6, 7, 8 of, their higher end prospects that they see as, I mean, the statistics of guys that go to that Arizona Fall League and end up playing in the big leagues is pretty high. I mean, it's probably 70-80% if I were to guess. And so then we're, teammates again in the Arizona Fall League, and wearing for the first time the major league uniform. You had been in big league camp, so you had experienced that, but wearing the legit major league uniform, the majestic uniforms, and had your name on the back. And it was like, man, we're doing this, like we're getting there, and then we go into big league. Were you put on the 40-man that year as well?
Yes.
So me and you got put on the 40-man roster together, which means you get to go to major league spring training. So this is 2008. And now you're close, you're with the major league staff, you're getting to see it. I mean, how crazy is that for you? Thinking 2 years later, you're asked to essentially go, or 2 years earlier, you're essentially asked to go home, if you don't want to do this. And then you were sitting in the major league locker room in spring training where you've been before, but now you're doing something a little bit different during those days.
Yeah. They may actually know my name and not like, you go catch that guy, but I mean, it's, I've thought about it a lot, and I could have been at home, I mean, and to go from, like I said, in 06, literally being told, hey, you can either pitch or you can go home, and kind of see where this ends up, to, I mean, 2 years later in 08, and I mean, and like we were saying, like I'd never pitched. I didn't know what I was doing. I literally was watching people pitch. I was watching how guys did things, like, okay, well, like Adam Ottavino, right? Like he would kind of like, here, I was like, oh, okay, that guy does this. This guy like went kind of like the power C and did this. This guy like turned and went. And I was like, okay, I was just watching people to try to figure out what worked for me, because I didn't know. And I think the coaches, I don't want to say the coaches didn't know, but I was throwing like a catcher. Like I was just kind of like, okay, here, up, let's go. So they kind of let me do my thing and kind of figure it out and know that it's not a cookie cutter, like you must do it this way. But to go from that to being in big league spring training, and it's like, man, I'm in here with all these guys, and I'm not just catching a bullpen and playing a BP game on field 6.
Your name's a little higher on the list this time.
I'm still number 80 something, but that's cool. That's fine. I really don't care. But I'm actually throwing a bullpen, and hey, they're actually maybe watching what I do. I'm gonna get in a game. I'm gonna do this. So, for me, it was. I mean, I think a lot of stuff that happened in my career was a whirlwind. It was a lot of things that went from like it could have went this way or this way, and I was very blessed to have been in that situation where they're like, hey, we're not going to send you home. Let's try pitching. I'm like, got it. But to be there and to go out there and like I said, had a good spring training, and then ended up getting sit down to Memphis where I had a really, really good year in Memphis. I think I threw I think it led the PCL in appearances with like 70 something. They're like, you're in, but I mean, I was throwing the ball well. I think I had like 60 something innings with like 100 and something strikeouts, 110 strikeouts. But even with that, I was still doing it with a fastball. Like I still was they were trying to get me to work on my breaking ball. And in that spring training, you mentioned, I'm pointing, you can't see where I'm pointing, but you got Russ Springer's, nameplate over there. He was one of the big ones with me coming in, and we were talking about all speed pitches and stuff like that. And he's like, throw a fastball. I'm like, okay. He's like, okay, grab ball, turn here, throw it like that. That's your cutter. I'm like, he's like, you're going to throw that. I'm like, got it. Okay. I mean, and it was a pitch that, I didn't know what I was doing with it. I didn't have an all speed pitch, so I didn't know how to throw it, how to whatever. And it took me a little bit to figure it out. And that whole 2008, I mean, heck, I don't really think I threw a good all speed pitch, and I'm not kidding. Like I don't think I threw a legit good off speed pitch till like 2010. and I'm not joking. And this was in the big leagues. And I think people may think I'm joking, but I mean, and it. I mean, I was throwing fastballs, and here it is. And I would throw a breaking ball, bad slider, cutter that went straight or that I yanked. But like I said, to be in that spot in spring training, to have the coaches, the Marty Masons, the Dunks, and have those veteran guys around, to be there to help in that journey, was crazy. Like I said, to think back a couple of years where it's like, man, I could be somewhere else.
Yeah. Well, and you talked about it with the catcher. Your ball always had, like, you have to do what you do well, and your ball had an explosion and a zip and a life to it that mine didn't have. Like, we were totally different pitchers, so you're able to get away with it a little bit more. It was a sneaky, it just got on you a lot faster, and you were able to make that work. But I remember in 2008, I had been up all year. I made the team out of spring, kind of out of nowhere. I was expecting we were going to be teammates again in Memphis. I make the team. And you get called up. It was September 1st, wasn't it? It was on September 1st in Arizona.
I spent that whole year. So I was on the 40-man, and I was throwing really well in Memphis. And in that time, it was like this guy, like Perez got called up, which he was throwing the ball well. Boggs got called up. This guy, and it was like this back and forth from Memphis to St. Louis. And I'm like, I think I'm doing okay. Like, I think, but they were wanting me to work on break ball, and it's going like that. Like, I literally, like, I remember one month they're like, you need to throw for every break ball, you need to throw or for every fastball, you need to throw a breaking ball. So I'd be like, okay. So I would literally go wham, fastball, strike one, breaking ball.
Yeah.
Fastball, strike two, breaking ball, strike three. Okay. Yeah. I'm like, hey, I did it, but it was like, I had because in my mind, I'm like, I'm not getting beat.
Yeah. So people need to understand that that's what the minor leagues are for, right? The minor leagues are, you obviously want to have success.
Yes.
I think the Cardinals in our era did a great job of developing throughout the minor leagues and saying, this is what you have to do. So the reason you didn't come up is because they didn't think you were quite ready yet and needed some other things to work on.
Yes.
And that's the place to do it. So, hey, we know you might not have success here. It was me and my changeup when I was a starter. It's like, you have to throw 10 to 15 changeups a game. It's like, well, that's not going to help me be successful in low A ball. But ultimately, it's going to help you. They're forcing you to do that. So it is about the development.
Mm-hmm.
And they had a plan for you, and they just didn't think you were ready yet.
Yeah.
To come up, because you don't want to come up and be exposed at the major league level, right? I mean, and they will expose you very quickly. And so that's kind of a part of that of like, all right, let's, Boggs came up. I remember that year we had a lot of starters we were in need of. So we had all kinds of guys coming up. Mike Parisi came up that year, and we had all kinds of guys come up, start, go to the bullpen or whatever. But those guys were more polished, pitchers than you were at the time.
They had an off-speed pitch.
They were pitchers in college, and they were pitchers in high school, and they've been doing it for a while.
They weren't catching a year and a half ago.
Right.
Let's give this world. No, and that's the same, man. I was one of those, like, I as this all was going on, like in no way was I like, man, this is because I was like, you know what, I'm like, I'm going to keep going out and doing what I was doing, and it's funny because we talk about that because yes, I did have success, I did have this and that while I was here in AAA. But it's like in that time, the end of June, beginning of July is actually when I met my wife here in Memphis. So it's like, you sit there and you look at the big scheme of things, and you're like, man, why wasn't I called up? I got one up there last time. It's like, man, there's a plan. You may not know it right now. You may not this and that, but like I said, I sit there all the time and think about it. Like, if one little thing were to go this way or that way, and like I said before, this goes this way, but it's like, if I get called up in whatever, we may not be here right now. I may be, I probably wouldn't be in this house doing, but I met my wife in while I was playing in Memphis at the end of June, June 27th, 28th. We're still not really sure the exact day we went on our first date now, but it's a joke around the house. But it's funny how everything kind of works out with stuff like that. But being here, and then I did end up getting called up in September, which was cool, man. And I know you had said at one point earlier, you were like, hey, like, being in big league spring training, you're like, man, I could, we're right here, we're really close. Like, I've had people ask me like, hey, when did you know you had the stuff to be in the big leagues? I was like when they called me up.
Yeah. I was even then, you don't know if it's going to work.
Right. I was like, I know then I was like a big leaguer.
Yeah.
But I was like, I didn't know if I was still like, okay, like I still got to, I mean, that they say, oh, it's easy to get to big leagues, but harder to stay. But you get there and you it's not like, oh, I'm here, job's done. It's like, no, you're here. You better keep working your tail off. And actually you're going to do more. And it's, but like, it was one of those things, like I didn't, I wanted to be in big leagues. I wanted whatever. I felt like I was putting in the work and doing everything I could, but it wasn't really until that September. I threw in a game that day, and then they called me in after the game and said I was going up. But like I said, it wasn't until then that I was like, okay, like not like, oh, I've made it, but like, oh my goodness, like I'm gonna be a big league. Like I'm gonna be in the big leagues. So
I remember you coming to my hotel room. We were in Arizona, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So I remember you coming to the hotel room, and then now we had the conversation in the locker room, like, what are we doing? And then we have the conversation like, we're in the Ritz-Carlton together. Like, what in the world are we doing here? Like, what is going on?
Doing? Yeah, no, it's the same. What are we doing here? Like, it's and it's.
So then you go out. What's that first game like? And then I want to kind of fast forward to 2011 and that. But what? I mean, that first game, everything you went through, all the ups and downs. You get out there, your first game. What was that first game? Just the emotion of that.
So I went out with Shag and BP that day, and I was telling this story to someone the other day because they asked about Dunk, and they're like, "What did Dave Duncan mean to you?" And I was like, "I don't think I can put into words."
Yeah.
A great, he had his this and that, but I was like, we're out shagging in Arizona, and Dunk walks up to me in BP. Everyone's doing whatever. He walks up and he's like, "Hey, welcome, congrats." I was like, "Thank you." And I remember it like it was yesterday. He's like, "I just wanted you to know that you belong here." And I'm like, oh, well, that's good because I just got to come like, okay, that's good. And he's like, but know that your stuff is good enough to get people out. He's like, do what you do. He's like, if you are not a 2-0 changeup guy, he goes, do not throw a 2-0 changeup. He's like, you are a 2-0. Here it is. I dare you to hit it. 3-1. Let it eat. He's like, do what you do. He's like, and your stuff is good enough to get these hitters out. And so to have that in your first day of like, oh my gosh, like since
am I good enough? Do I belong here? Do I deserve to be here? Right? Is this going to work? Am I going to be down tomorrow?
Right. You're like, Tony's walking around. Oh boy.
Right. Those are all real things that we think about every day, right?
Yeah, and that next year, I thought about it every single day. Every time you let him run, you're like, gosh, here comes Tony. But for him to come up day one and to say that, I was like, okay. And not that I was like, I made it, but it was like, okay, just keep doing what I was doing, and I'm going to be the best me that I can be. I don't need to be Ryan Franklin or Russ Springer or Jason Isringhausen or Bruce Sutter. I need to be the best me that I could be. And heck, the big league pitching coach, that's a legend, and already he told me what you do is good enough. So I remember going in that game. I remember sitting in the bullpen the first day. I didn't pitch the first day. I ended up pitching the second day, and I just remember the first day, like looking around, being like, out in Arizona, it's like, I'm like, you're playing baseball in a warehouse, like it's like a big airplane hangar. I was like, this is amazing, like but when I did get up the next day, they called down, hey, get Motte going. I'm down there, and I'm like, ready to go. I'm like firing baseballs. I'm ready after like a half a throw, and I'm just like firing. And that same guy, a year or so earlier, that was, telling me, hey, grab this pitch like this, or early that spring, hey, you're gonna throw this cutter like this, walks up and like stands like right in front of me. And like, so like I'm me, the catcher is that way, and Russ Springer is like right here. And I'm like firing. He comes up and stands in front of me. And I'm like, he's like, how you doing? I'm like, I'm good. He's like, you loose? I was like, yeah. He goes, stop throwing. He's like, you need to calm down. I was like, I'm good. He's like, listen. He's like, I get it. He's like, first time out, there's a lot of, emotion. There's this, and that. Your adrenaline is through the stinking roof. You're this, and that. You're jacked, ready to go. He's like, but save your bullets. He's like, because you got to go out there and pitch. You don't need to throw, 50 pitches out here, because good Lord, you only want to throw 15 out there. Like, what are you doing? He's like, so he literally just stood there. And then I think there was 2 outs. And then when the third out was made, he kind of stepped aside. He's like, couple more. So I threw a couple more. And in the meanwhile, Marty Mason, the bullpen coach, is sitting back there just like shaking his head, just like, listen, baby, but I went out there, and I think Tony and them I think they always did a good job, or at least I feel like they did, of putting people in positions to succeed. And I coach here at a high school in Memphis, and that's what I try to do with our boys. And I feel like when they brought me in, they put me in a situation to succeed. I came in, I came in mid-inning. That's what I did. I came in mid-inning, and my first batter I faced was Mark Reynolds. And I think in their mind, they knew, like, hey, Motte's got a fastball. If he gets it and gets after it, he can get us out of this jam and blow past Reynolds. And it goes back to earlier that day of Dunk being like, hey man, your stuff's good enough to do it. So going out there in that situation, yes, the emotions were high, the adrenaline was all pumped up, but I was like, let's go. And I mean, and every time I got on the mound, I did the exact same thing from a mental standpoint. Before I would step on the mound, and heck, you may not even know this, but I would sit there and I'd step on the mound. I'd be like, everything you got. And I'd get my sign. I mean, 90% of the time it was a fastball, but I was like, let's go, come set, get the, and it was once I got out there, I wasn't thinking about this, that, the other, the birds, the trees. It was, everyone kind of disappears, and when you do hear them, things aren't going well.
Yeah, that's usually not a good sign. Yeah.
We've had a couple of those as well, but I just went out there and was like, you know what, take a breath, everything you got, and went out there and ended up striking out Reynolds to get out of the inning, and then went out the next inning and had another clean inning. But just going out there and being able to get that first one out of the way was like, getting a little hug from number 4, on the way in was pretty awesome. But it's definitely something that I'll never forget from a baseball standpoint.
Yeah, people ask me all the time. We do a lot of the corporate events down at the stadium, fantasy BPs, and a lot of times we'll do a Q&A. So what's your highlight of your career? And 2011 is obviously an easy one, but I don't think people realize how special those debuts are and they're your first time. For me, it was, home opener, opening day, 1-0 game. Matt Holliday was my first hitter. But I'm in front of all my friends and family. Like that moment is, I always love hearing guys tell that story, because it's like, man, and then you've already laid out like everything you've gone through, so they understand the buildup of that, and the coaches that help you get there, the family, the parents that got you to and from practice, the grandparents, all that kind of stuff that goes into it. So I love, hearing all the details about that. So you finish up that month, 09 and 10, you're having success, you're having failures, you're having all that you're figuring out who you are, how to develop, you're pitching in crucial roles. I mean, you were never you were always a setup guy, 7th inning, 8th inning type, situation when the game's on the line. So let's fast forward to 11. Our bullpen is kind of all over the place. We have, I went into the rotation, which I was kind of right there with you we were kind of throwing the same types of innings, 7th, 8th. You were more the get us out of the inning guy, because you're more of a strikeout guy. I was a more start the inning. So I'm in the rotation. You're still in that kind of role. Fernando Salas is doing a great job, holding down the 9th inning. Ryan Franklin was our closer and did a great job, and was having a tough year that year and had to make some changes. And young guys were asked to step up maybe before they were ready to, and we're doing a good job and keeping us in it.
Eduardo Sanchez was one of those guys. He was heaters and sliders that you're like, how is that ball move? I mean, but him and Salas and guys like that, you're like, that's one of the things that maybe people don't remember. It's like those kind of things that, I mean, those guys were nasty. And
I think Salas ended up with 20-something saves, right, that year. I mean, it was the first part. I mean, he was Sanchez. I don't remember. He probably had under 10, but if whatever he had, if he had one less, we don't get in. So
right, exactly.
So then we get we're getting down the stretch, and we're starting to make headway. I'm back in the bullpen now. We trade for Edwin Jackson. I go back to the bullpen. I'm more of the long guy at that time because I'm stretched out, pitching in kind of a lot of different roles. And it was probably about that time. It was probably the All-Star break. I bet you if we went back and looked, our trade deadline, I'm sorry. I bet it was right around there where you had started kind of getting some of those chances. You and Salas were kind of going back and forth. And then all of a sudden, and it's kind of the Wainwright story of 06, right? So Wainwright, pitching, and all of a sudden a week before they put him in as closer, and you kind of roll with it. So I think everybody remembers you out there for the last pitch of 11, but don't realize this wasn't something you've done for, 3 years. I mean, this wasn't your job as a closer. You're still every time out there, trying to prove that you can do it. You obviously do it down the stretch very well. And then going into that postseason, we're rolling with what we've been doing.
Yeah, I mean, and just to go back real quick, so 08 got called up, had a good September, made the team in 09 as the closer. I was nasty in spring training. I had a great September, nasty spring training, and I come in, and I had someone at our event a couple weeks ago bring this up. He's like, "Do you remember opening day?" I was like, "Yes." I'm like, "You don't have to. You can stop the story." I'm like, "Yes, I remember." But for those of you listening who don't remember, but I'm sure you do.
So we were on opposite on that, because I had the worst spring training in the history of spring trainings in 09. Had a very good season in 08, all year up. Had a terrible spring training, on the verge of getting cut and getting sent to Memphis. And so you have a great spring. You're the closer. They're hiding me because they don't. And we get to the big leagues. I'm not pitching. It's like 4 games in. I still haven't pitched. And I think you blew 2 of 3.
We had a 3-run lead. We're at home. We're playing Pittsburgh, and it was 26 degrees.
Yeah.
Not that bad, but I remember it being cold as mess. We have a 3-run lead. I go out there, let up a 4 spot, blow the save. We lose that game. The next time I pitch in a save situation, we're playing the Astros. I think we had a 3-run lead again.
Yep.
I let up 2, and you came in and bailed me out, and I'm just like,
I haven't pitched yet. Because I was so bad. I haven't pitched yet all year. So this is the first time.
Man, this is not well. But
and I face Hunter Pence, who is not. I'm not very good against, and so they bring me in. I believe it was first and third, maybe, or something, with 2 outs.
Yeah, and I already let up 2, and I had 2 of my other guys. I was close to just rack it up, and then them saying, "Hey, man, go see how Memphis is doing again."
Yeah, well, and so I'm on the same. If I give that run up, I'm going to Memphis that night. I guarantee it. I guarantee after the spring training,
we're just hopping in
we'll be roommates.
We're just gonna roll down.
Yes,
but so
I saved your career because I got Hunter Pence to ground. Saved my career and your career.
Said it multiple times. I mean, you were trying to save your career, but ipso facto, you helped him. But with that, so that game early in the year, I got a save opportunity against Houston, but I didn't get another save opportunity till that 2011, till it was the middle end of August.
Yeah.
And we joked earlier about, hey, Tony walking around, and you're like, oh man, is he about to send me down? But 2009, I mean, I'd have some good stretches, and then I remember going to Philly, and good Lord, I think I let up a 6 spot in a third of an inning in 2 different outings, and I'm like, I'm going down. I'm like, I'm done. Like, I don't even know why I'm going in the locker room, but luckily Dunk and them, they stuck with me and let me, hey, he's learning, and in the big leagues is not an easy way to learn to do it. And I think they saw hey, if he goes down to Memphis right now, hey, throwing a break, he's not going to learn anything. He needs to get it knocked all over the place. And there was times I did well and times I got knocked all over the place. But then fast forward into 2011, I had a good stretch in 2010 where I think I went a month and a half, and didn't let up a run. I didn't know what I was doing. And even in that time, I actually had I had separated my shoulder. I had an AC joint separation in my shoulder. So I couldn't feel my arm, but I was throwing really well. And so it's one of those things in baseball, you're like, how does this work? I can't brush my teeth, but I can throw. But even then I wasn't getting those, save opportunities, which I didn't care. I was like, man, I just want to go out and pitch and get guys out. And then, August of 2011, like I said, Frankie started, and then we had a couple other guys, and Salas was doing well. And then honestly, one day the phone didn't ring in the 8th inning, and I was like, guess I'm down. Okay, sweet. All right. And then it rings in the 9th inning, or after the 8th inning. It was like, hey, Motte's got the 9th. And I just remember looking, and Salas was, taking his coat, and I was like, okie dokie. I was like, all right, I'll go get, and I went out there and got saved that day. And then a couple games later, phone rang, and it was a save situation, and I got the save, and and nothing was ever talked about. It was never hey man,
it was kind of back and forth, if I remember. Salas would get one, you would get one. It was kind of
it was for a day or so, but it was hey, we're gonna go, because I think it ended up with 8 or 9 down the stretch, and but it was just one of those weird things where we're like, okay, what's going on? And then that's when Tony wouldn't, even later in the season, getting into September, I was throwing the ball well, and we were starting to win and do some stuff, and he wouldn't call me the closer, but I was who he was putting in save situations. And there's a good story about me not getting up on the mound when Murph was down there trying to. He's like, you're in the game, and I'm like, dude, Tony didn't tell me to get in the game. I mean, we almost got we didn't get in a fight in the bullpen with the bullpen catcher coach at the time, but it's just one of those things that I just wanted to be in the game. I just wanted to go out there and get some guys out, and like I said, had a good August, good September, and like I said, and so did the rest of the team, which is what it took us to get to where we were in 11. So
11, the Philly, the Milwaukee, you're starting to get in some of these bigger moments that kind of prepping you for that World Series. You get into there, like I said when we opened this, very few people get to stand on the mound at the end. That iconic moment there. And like you said, that you being able to do that was only available because of everybody else on that team pulling their weight and doing their thing. But let's go through we don't need to talk about the inning, the game before that. I thought you were on the mound when you were the one that cost us the World Series.
Yes. You're like, idiot. Well,
it puts us down, but it sets the stage for one of the most iconic moments in Cardinal history. But then on Game 7, you get the chance to come back out with the lead, a pretty significant lead. But what is your mindset coming into that, knowing what happened, the day before, that leading up to that and everything, going out there with a pretty big lead with everything on the line?
Yeah, I didn't really think about it at all. Like I didn't think about a lot of things out there. I think we've talked about it. I've talked about it at different events and stuff like that. People are like, hey, what was going through your mind during this? I'm like, nothing. Like, well, what do you mean? I'm like, I don't know what you mean. What do I mean? But nothing. I literally, like I said before, I'd get on the mound, everything you got. Whether the ball before that was hit 7,000 feet or whether I got a strikeout. I was like, I said it earlier as well. Like, I wasn't good enough to be like, okay, I got that guy out. I got this. Like, baloney, man. Like, so I didn't think about the night before when Hamilton hit the 2-run home run off of me, because it was like, hey, Yadi's like, heater in. I'm like, let's roll. Wham, whack. And even in that Game 6 when he hit that, I remember watching him go out, and on the mound there was a moment in time where I was on the mound. I was like, I just lost the World Series. I was like, this stinks. I was like, well, all right, let's go. Got the ball back and was like, I better get these next two guys out or it's going to be a lot uglier. And then I end up getting the next two guys out. And then, like you said, it ends up being the most, one of the craziest comebacks ever. And then, the triple, the bloop by Berkman, then Freeze's walk off. And then that then sets the table for that next night to go out and, do what we did. But coming out that next day, I think the only thing I did differently that day in Game 7, which you hear people say it like, hey, like take it in, man. Like, just take in the moment, look around. But I feel like I don't want to speak for everyone that was there, but I feel like I was in such a whirlwind. Like, 2.5 games back in August.
The whole 2 months was a whirlwind. Yeah. The whole thing. Yeah.
Go. Like, so I didn't think about anything. Like someone asked me yesterday, like, how'd you feel, playing the Phillies, because they were picked to be the favorite. The Brewers, like, they were pretty good. Heck, we were supposed to be at home eating popcorn on our couch.
Right.
But it's like, so I was like, I felt like we were playing with house money. I was like, what's the worst that happens? I mean, we were 10.5 games back, and it's very similar the way I look at almost like my career. It's like, I could have been sent home in 2006.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm literally playing with house money right now. Like, what am I going to go out there and worry about or freak out about or anything like that? But after Game 6, going into Game 7, I remember getting in the bullpen, and you look around and you take stuff in. But I remember for the first like 4 or 5 innings, yes, we were scoring runs, but I just remember looking around and being like, this is cool. Like, whether I will ever be here again or not, I've got no idea. But I was like, man, this is awesome. And that's honestly one of the things I thought when they did call down, like, hey, Motte's got the 9th. I went in, threw my warm-up pitches, and there's videos on the thing. But as I'm walking down the ramp, I'm kind of just like looking around. And it's like the only time, because usually I was like, okay, head down, take hat off, sniff, hop, run, but I kind of like looked around and I was like, man, this is pretty cool. And then I, ended up taking my hat off, doing my little thing and being like, let's go.
Mm-hmm.
And got into it and from then on, like, literally didn't think anything. Like, there wasn't really much going through my mind at all, which there never really was when I got out there. Because like I said, I couldn't think. I think I overthought as a hitter, like, okay, I got to do all this. And I was just like, man, that's not helpful for anyone. I'm not doing anything successful. Go out there, trust my ability, and let's go do it. And so, like I said, I went out there in Game 7 and got a fly ball for the first out. Second out was a ground ball to the Scalzo. That was also one of the other times as the Scalzo feels it, and he's throwing it across the infield. I've said this before too. Like, as the ball is going across the infield, I can close my eyes and see it now in like slow motion, like watching it go across. I feel like the fans, they didn't, but I feel like they were like, it was like in my mind, it was silence. And Albert caught it, and it was, I remember hearing, and as they're throwing the ball around the infield, that's one of the other times I remember being like, man, these people are loud.
Yeah, I've never heard it this loud before.
Nuts. Got the ball back from the Scalzo, and I was like, all right, well, here we go. Like just right back to like, okay, sweet. And then, throwing the last pitch, getting, having Craig, run back, catch it, never a doubt. And then, turning and seeing, Yachty's smiling, beautiful face, coming out, like just the joy and stuff like that. That's another thing. Like I said, you can do this, do that. And there's pictures of it, but certain things you can just close your eyes and I can see that number 4. You see Yachty running out there with his huge smile and stuff like that. But it was one of those things from a baseball standpoint was a pretty good day at the office as I tell people. So.
Yeah. And I don't think I've tried to explain to people when you're out there, it's like an out of body experience. So like all the things you're mentioning, like I would go through it and then you go home that night and it could just be a regular season game and the replay's on or something you turn on, you're like, oh, I didn't know that happened. Or I didn't know that happened. Or I remember that going a lot differently because it's just a totally different, you don't hear the crowd. You don't see or pay attention to that tunnel vision. Like you talk about but to be able to do it in that moment says a lot about being ready for that moment, and not allowing those things to kind of creep in. So I don't want to fast forward through the rest of.
I think too, man, like we said about Tony and Dunk and like those guys, like I got that chance in 2009 for a quick, but like after that, those next 2 years, like they put me in positions to succeed. It wasn't like, hey man, you're going to go start tomorrow. It was like, hey, you know what? We're facing this guy that, you know what, your fastball can beat that guy. We're going to put you in. We're going to give you some confidence. Hey, Matt, this guy, he's not good on the slow breaking ball. You're going to go do, and it's like I feel like for me that they did a good job of putting me in those positions to succeed, to go out there to know that I was ready for those situations. But also then it goes back to Dunk, like that first game out there, like your stuff is good enough. Like you are good enough to go out there and get the job done. And it's like, okay. So it's like I had that confidence in myself, and it wasn't a cocky, and you guys were around me. I don't think I was a cocky whatever, but I get out there and I was confident in my stuff because of kind of what was around me between the coaching staff and the players and the situations that I've been put in to go out there and do that. So
yeah, no doubt. And I don't want to fast forward through the rest of your career because you had a lengthy career after you left, the Cardinals, and did a lot of great things there and had a ton of success. How many years did you end up with total?
9, like just over 9 years.
Yeah, which is incredible to think about where you started and everything you went through.
Oh, yeah.
To get that is a fantastic feat. I want to touch on, I know we've been on here for a while, which I think is great. I love all the stories and the in-depth and things we get into. But I know you're excited and passionate about what you're doing now. Tell everybody what you're doing now. I was down in Memphis last year. My boys were playing in a tournament and you were playing that night. I was wanting to get over there, but we were going to a Grizzlies game with the whole team. But tell everybody what you're doing now and kind of your love and what gets you fired up these days.
So I'm coaching high school baseball down here in Memphis. I coach at Christian Brothers High School. So anyone from the St. Louis area, it's a LaSallian Brothers School of CBC in St. Louis. There's a bunch of different LaSallian Brothers schools all over the country. I think 100 something of them. But I'm here in Memphis coaching high school baseball there, and I love it. I've told people all the time, like the kids are good. The school has been great. The parents have been awesome. And, it's one of those things people have asked, like, well, why would you want to do something like that? Why don't you coach in high school? Why don't you want to do college? Why don't you want to do this and that? Or pro ball? I was like, man, I tried the college thing for a year. And it got to a point that when I did retire, I want to spend time with my family. And from playing, and what a lot of people don't know is you're on the road a lot of time. Like, you're like half the year you're on the road. And even when you're home, you're kind of home, but you're at the field at noon, games at 7. You're like, what do you do all day? Like, well, you got to get there. You may work out. You may watch video. You may
do nothing, but you got to be there.
Right, but you better be there at 12 because it's your first year in the big leagues. You better stare at those socks there. Right. But you spend a lot of time at the field. So it's like, when I did retire, I was like, you know what, I want to be with my wife and my kids. So in doing that, like I said, helped with the University of Memphis because they were so gracious to open up their doors when I was here off-season training. But then I told the coach, I was like, I just don't want to travel, man. Like, I don't need to go to UConn or, like, I'm good. I want to be with my family. So the opportunity at the high school opened up, and I knew I wanted to do something like that just because my high school coaches, they were great. I went to high school in New York, and they were just what they taught us baseball stuff. That's great. Not who cares, but awesome. But it's like, but just the way they taught you how to be like a better person, a better man. And there's so many things baseball wise that transcend the field that help you out in life, like failure, like giving up the, home run to Josh Hamilton. Are you going to sit there and be like, well, man, that's it, I'm done? No, you're going to pick your butt back up. You're going to get that ball back, and you're going to get that next guy out, because I can't do anything about that. I can learn from it, but I gotta move on. I don't necessarily have to forget, but I can go. But like I said, like they taught me so much. And I knew I always wanted to, like I said, coach at the high school level and give back. And like I said, we've got a great group of kids and parents. And the school here has been awesome. So being able to do that. My wife coaches high school basketball right up the street as well, girls high school basketball. So we always joke around that between her, 15 to 20 kids, girls, and my 40 baseball boys, we've adopted another 60 people, and really is. I mean, these kids are like our own. We do anything for them, and I think that's one of the things that. That's how my high school coaches were. Like, they'd be tough on us. They'd make us run when we did something not so smart, but also we're, 15, 18-year-old boys that thought we knew everything. And they're like, you don't necessarily know, and you kind of learn. And so like I said, trying to, teach them life lessons and stuff like that, but also, teach them some baseball. So it's been a blast, and I've loved every second of it. So,
and a quick fun fact is you coach against another former Cardinal.
Yes. So Bo Hart coaches he doesn't. He used to coach at a rival high school, and he coaches or coached at MUS, and it's like a Cubs Cards. It's like Yankees Red Sox. It's a rivalry here in Memphis that's been going back for 100 years. And it's one of those things that it is. It was funny whenever we would coach against each other, because it was almost like, yes, there was a game going on, but it was like me and Bo would be on opposite dugouts, just like I'd be making a little comment, or I'd be doing something, or I'd be giving like signs, and he'd be like, those don't mean anything. Like, 2, 2, 1, 3, 4. He's like, the catcher's not even looking. Like, stop doing it. Like, so the kids are like, what's going on? I'm like, man, hey, at some point you gotta play, you gotta do whatever, but it is a game, like especially at this level, like you have to enjoy what you're doing. I mean, heck, even at our level, man, like I enjoyed it. I enjoyed going to the ballpark and playing baseball. I mean, I tell people all the time, I was like, I don't know if I've had a real job. I got to play baseball. I got to do the same thing my 8-year-old son does out at the rec fields. Like, I get to go out and we got to play a kid's game. So when you sit there and you look at it, and that goes back to some of the other stuff, like, do you think about this, how much pressure? It's like, I'm playing a game, like I'm out here playing baseball, and it's, like I said, I could have been home in 06.
Yeah.
So,
well, I'm glad you weren't. I'm glad you were on the mound at the end of that. And we have a lot of memories together. And I appreciate your time to take this and share it. And this is why when the Cardinals talked to me about doing the podcast, like I love these things just to be able to document this and talk about these stories and kind of the behind the scenes stuff and, how our careers were so parallel to each other, but so different, but so similar at the same time. And I think that's cool for people to get a look at that. So appreciate you opening up and sharing those stories. For those of you listening, you can go back. We've been doing this podcast now for 3 years. So there's a lot of great stories and great Cardinal history to be told that you can go back and listen to as a part of the Chatters Box podcast. Give it a review so that way we can share it with your friends. It's out there. But Jason, appreciate it, man. Thanks for all you do here in the St. Louis community. Still involved in the Cardinals organization, and then giving back to the kids there in Memphis, making sure that they are learning baseball the right way and have an opportunity to go forward. So appreciate your time.
Helping others, that's man. Thank you, Mac. Love you, brother.
All right, buddy. You too.